Hi everyone, welcome to UK USA. Today we have a first episode in an exciting mini-series focusing on the impact of recently announced changes in the UK budget on the 30th of October. I'm Aidan Grant as always, and I'm joined today by my colleague Emily Malvasso, a senior associate who sits with me in the tax and estate planning team here. Emily and I have been poring over the announcements with the rest of our colleagues. We wanted to bring you our thoughts on what these rule changes mean for individuals in some of the most common US-UK circumstances. Emily, how have you found that poring over experience? Has it been as fun as we thought it was going to be?
Is it sad if I say that I have actually quite enjoyed it?
It's been tiring, but yeah, you become a lawyer to learn new law sometimes.
Interesting times, for sure.
So what Emily and I have been doing is we've been trying to segment most common client scenarios into sort of parsable chunks. And what we think we're going to bring to you over the course of 3 episodes is the most common scenarios for US-UK individuals. And we're going to sort of break down and digest what the new announcements mean for people in each of those episodes. So in this first episode, we're going to look at people thinking of moving to the UK. So let's take an American who's coming to the UK for the first time. And then thereafter, we'll think about Americans who are sort of already here. So Emily, sort of most fundamentally, let's think about what actually changed to this highest level. We've just lost our dear old domicile status.
Yes, exactly. And in many ways, it simplifies matters for clients, I think, and for Americans obviously coming to the UK. Generally, our advice in the past has certainly been that Americans don't always benefit from the remittance basis of taxation when they first come to the UK. But actually, with the new system, having got rid of domicile, it's much simpler to, first of all, determine what somebody's position is here in the UK. It removes all of the emotive arguments surrounding the concept of domicile. But also the new system is simpler. So when you arrive into the UK now for the first time, or having not been a UK resident in the previous 10 years, you can opt into a system where for your first 4 years of tax residence, you will only be exposed to UK tax on your UK source income and gains.
Which is really important because, as you rightly pointed out, we've acted both for a lot of Americans and non-Americans, but particularly Americans for this space, who really sort of struggle to grapple with the idea of, wait, you can't tell me with precise certainty whether I'm a domiciliary, how much I'm going to be taxed. There's 2 different ways I can be taxed. I accidentally claimed the remittance basis, but I shouldn't have done. This clarity, although these rules might be slightly more punitive, we shouldn't disregard what clarity this is going to bring.
Yeah, they are simpler and they're more objective and they're entirely residence-based, which I think makes it a lot easier for them to understand.
And particularly for someone thinking of coming to the UK, say an American, we're buying them breathing space, effectively. Decide, do you want to live here? How much do you like our rain? How much do you miss the sun you left behind in the US? And decide over those 4 years whether it's something you like. And if you're here for a short-term contract, or you decide actually it's not for you, you've not kind of adopted any irreversible change in deciding to come to the UK.
Exactly. You don't have to essentially live with the consequences of your decision if you accidentally entered into, decided to be taxed on the remittance basis of taxation, and then having to think about the tax treatment that will apply when you bring funds back into the UK at a later date. Instead, under the new regime, that for the first 4 years, you don't have to worry about bringing those funds into the UK. And thereafter, there aren't any adverse tax consequences in doing so either. So it does give you that additional time just to decide, well, first of all, whether you'd like to stay in the UK, and secondly, how it works for you.
I mean, the thing that's, of course, as ever with Americans, Americans are already taxed in the US. So in the grand scheme of things, they're going to be paying American tax on a worldwide basis already. So the argument for an American, hey, maybe you want to come to the UK and they no UK tax for 4 years. Woohoo! I mean, that's great, but they're already paying US tax. And generally speaking, our tax rates are, and we know now after the budget, are staying broadly the same. So it's sort of slightly scant consolated to Americans saying, well, great, you won't have to suffer UK tax because you're already going to suffer US tax. So maybe not quite so impactful as it might be for someone from another country.
Except I suppose I agree fully. I suppose it just helps the reporting, simplifies people's reporting here in the UK, not having to not having to return their worldwide income gains, but equally to opt into the system, you do have to disclose what your foreign income and gains are.
Which an American's already used to doing anyway. So actually, for that client from any other country, apart from, let's say, maybe Eritrea, the classic example, isn't used to disclosing their worldwide income and gains and thinking, what? I now have to do this. That's the hurdle I'm going to jump over. And now we're saying to an American, you're used to this. Get used to the F-bar, etc. So actually, we're dragging everyone else down to the level of Americans rather than necessarily lifting people up.
Yeah.
Although, I should stress, and of course, we're talking about assuming that an American is already paying tax in the UK as they would in the US, but there are some items of income or gain which have been fraught for Americans, as you and I both know. When they come to the UK, they bring their lovely existing structures to the UK, where we've gone, we're not entirely sure whether the UK is going to tax you in the same way in the US. In this 4-year period, some of those income and gains are going to be, disregarded for the first 4 years.
Yes, it leaves some time to essentially make mistakes as you get used to, whilst you seek the advice that you should have had from the beginning in your initial, period of residence here in the UK.
Any particular corporate structures or trust structures you're thinking of?
Yes, NLCs and living trusts. And, normally we deal with situations where we have clients who are paying tax, are exposed to UK tax on the worldwide basis because they're not electing into a remittance base of taxation, and they are dealing with distributions from their living trusts or indeed their LLCs, and it's hard sometimes to lots of tax advice is needed to confirm what that treatment will be.
You don't necessarily need to have sorted that all out before you get to, which is sometimes the problem for a client. We've made a joke many times about the clients stealing off a plane and then go, right, what should I have done? And it was go back to the US and at the time come back and talk.
If you received a distribution in your first 4 years, we'll be able to more confidently say that there are no issues.
For the avoidance of doubt, we kind of leapt straight into this because we're so excited and enthusiastic about how these rules are going to apply. But they're not just going to apply to someone arriving in the UK. There is that caveat about how long they needed to have been outside of the UK for, which won't be relevant for someone coming to the UK for the first time, but there's kind of a category of people that we want to talk about where how long they've been outside the UK for is going to be incredibly relevant.
Yeah, it opens up opportunities for those who would have been treated as formerly domiciled residents under the previous rules. So now even, people born in the UK with what was a UK domicile of origin, will now be able to return to UK after a long period of non-UK residence, currently 10 years. And they will be able to be treated in the same way as a new arriver for the first time in the UK. So it provides sort of valuable opportunities for planning in those initial 4 years.
So, the headline story of sort of some of the few net winners, I did discuss this with the immediate budget reaction with James Austin, is returning UK people are one of the few net beneficiaries because they're going to get that same 10-year period as everyone else. So all of those British expats sitting in the US who maybe are thinking of retiring back to the UK, or God forbid they come back to the UK and die in the first couple of years, those people are the rare silver lining in the otherwise quite grey cloud.
The people who thought that they would be otherwise unable to reset their clock for UK tax purposes now have a new opportunity to do so.
I love leaving a class on a positive note. Thank you, Emily. When we come back next time, we are going to consider those Americans who are already here. We expect that's going to be the class who are going to have a slightly more complicated time of things. But join us again next time for our second episode.